Welcome everyone to Software Craftspeople India community. SCI, it's an acronym for Software Craftspeople India. So it is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to connecting individuals with the software craftsmanship mindset. Our mission is to foster a community where members can improve their skills and get better at software craft. We have over 2,700 plus members on Meetup, and we organize talks, roundtables, and workshops aimed at enhancing the craft of software development throughout the year. We invite several industry experts to share their insights and expertise with our community. Incubite is the founder and sponsor of this community. We are a company focused on delivering well-crafted software solutions. And today's speaker, we have Sapan Parikh. So just introducing Sapan. So as a tech evangelist and mentor, Sapan has been fueled by two things in his 20 years professional career, coffee and his love of designing self-motivated, high-performing and passionate software engineering teams. Being being a software craftsperson at heart, he has created and coached teams of over 500 software developers across the US and India with the sole objective of forging exceptional software products with an unfettered focus on quality. He led product and engineering teams for one of the largest EHR companies in the US and is now the founder of Incubite, a software development agency built on the principles of building well-crafted software products. He's also the co-organizer of this SCI community. So let's welcome Sapan. And Sapan, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Sayed, and thanks a lot for the wonderful introduction. People sound so much better in their intros than in reality. Uh, that being said, I think quick one on Incubate. Incubate is hiring and usually is always hiring. If you already are not working at Incubate, you should take a moment to maybe start and send an email or connect with one of our HR or people success managers in on LinkedIn and send them a note. That being said, let's get started. Uh, I think we want to talk about how we can use AI and learn together how we can all get better at it. And when I was preparing for the presentation, I kind of generated this image using AI. That let's see if we can create an image using an AI that I can use here or not. And this image in itself is a huge sort of testament to how development with AI goes. This image, when I was developing, I wrote a simple prompt. I talked about the style and I talked about like, hey, this should be kind of the text that I want to see. Um, and then the image got generated. I was very happy how it looked, but both the arrows are pointing to the bot, while this one was supposed to point to the person. And both the people are using keyboard sort of a thing, and only one of them was supposed to use the keyboard. And these are the kind of bugs that you will see when you're working with AI. 80% of your work will be done, but 20% will not be done the way you want it. And you'll be spending your 80% of the time uh, fixing those 20% of the bugs. I did not change this image later because I knew just to have this arrow move to this person and just removing this keyboard would actually take way more time, maybe 10 times more time than it took me to just write a prompt and create uh, this image. Uh, but that being said, I think let's talk about what we are going to do today. I hope you are able to see three windows in my screen. It's intentionally like that because this also kind of shows that how is it going to be when you'll work with AI? You're going to have to multitask. You'll be doing multiple things. And in this case as well, while the presentation goes over here, we'll be seeing some of the results of what's going on and some notes over here. And on here is my terminal where I'll be writing commands and you'll see uh, what's going on. Now, talking of setup, we are going to try Claude Code today. Of 113 people who has joined over here, could people who has used Claude Code, which is NPM command line tool, CLI tool that you can use. People who has used it, can you please raise your hand using the raise hand button on your screen? 7 is the current number. 8. Okay. So 8 people of 100 plus people. Let's assume there's 10 or 20 people who has used Cloud Code, but I think that's the goal today. What we want to do is at least create enough curiosity in all of you that you are okay creating an account on Anthropic console, and then actually use your credit card to put some credits in it, even if it is $5 or $10, and try this tool. That's the goal. If at the end of the uh, presentation, if you'll go and use it for yourself, I think that's a great measure of success for me. Uh, Also, I think other thing that we want to do is, let me first show you what we do, and I'll talk about other things. This is Claude Code, very simple. All you really need is Claude Code uh, account. I mean, Claude Anthropic API account. Second, you have to create a key and have a Anthropic API key set up in your console. Actually, you don't even need that. And you install and you Claude Code, and you can get started as soon as you have installed Claude Code and as soon as you have an account. I'm going to go ahead and do this, right? Uh, right now, let me go ahead, step out. This is an empty directory. It has nothing in it. And I'm going to start Claude over here. I'm going to write a very simple prompt. The app, this directory is called Spendwise. We want to create a front end for Spendwise. Spendwise is nothing but an app like Splitwise. And we want to sort of say, hey, can you create a app that's like Splitwise and create a front end for it and use hard-coded JSON files as backend fake data, right? So let's go ahead and type that prompt. Can you create a front end for our app Spendwise? It is same as Splitwise, which helps people split or helps groups of people split expenses when they are on trips, etc. Right? Create a front end using React, White, TypeScript. And I think that's all I want to say. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Oops. This is a new one now. Right when we are doing a demo, huh? Let's go ahead. Let me go ahead and remove the MCP servers, which I have added. Okay, so I think this is going to happen a lot, that once I add a prompt, uh, Claude Code will start sort of writing code and running commands. It's actually running npm install. It is running npm dev. It asks me question. I'm gonna hit enter. But what it means is that as we are demoing things or as we're doing something, we are going to have these big, large durations of delays, so to speak, right? And what I want to do is I want you to keep asking me questions on chat. And Sayed, maybe when you see something like this, or please feel free to interrupt and ask me those questions that you see on chat. And we want to make this presentation as interactive as possible so that if something like this is going on, we can talk about those things. But what right now is happening is that as I told Claude Code, I want to create this prompt. Now, if you have used AI to AI to do coding, most probably you have already done this, that you write something and it will print some code and you'll create a file and you'll paste that and you'll put the file in the right project and you'll maybe run the run command. What Anthropic has done over here is created something that is so niche to creating just code. And then it also works with tools or what we call function calls, right? So Anthropic will now be able to call function calls, create files, save them, and if there are errors, it will read the errors and also try to fix the code. So it also is working sort of in a loop over and over again until it sees that things are working. So that was our setup. I'm going to go ahead and keep hitting enter. Now, while it is writing code, let's quickly think about how legacy software development worked, right? Legacy software development, we sort of thought something and then developed it. Then we thought something and then we developed it. And if you look at this image, thinking is intentionally a little gray and light, and develop is bold and a little bigger. And the reason is that when we intentionally did something, thinking was actually not a lot. We would think if you're in a very conventional company as a developer, you did maybe no thinking whatsoever. A ticket came. I mean, you did think about the technology or you did think about the coding aspect of it, but not necessarily a lot about the requirement. Almost like ticket comes in, which has acceptance criterias, and you try to figure out. So thinking part is in actually figuring out how to implement the solution, but not a lot on what we are building or why we are building something, right? Um, and if you look at what we just did, is this, which is think and prompt. It took us 2 minutes to think and 2 minutes to prompt, right? So what will change is that you'll be thinking and you'll be prompting, and just how we are waiting right now for something like this to write code, we'll just be waiting for AI to write code, right? Um, and as that happens, now we are gonna just have to wait for a few seconds while this happens. So do we have any questions?
Hello.
Yeah.
You said you removed the MCP server. Um,
One of the
can you please
MCP,
yeah.
we'll talk about MCP a little bit later, but let me actually tell you a few other things that while it is happening, what is happening, right? So first of all, we are getting fast results. The amount of code that it is writing and the files it is creating, and Vishwajit, I'm sorry, we talked about MCP because it's part of the story. I want to talk about it as we move forward. Um, there are a few things that I had made a note of was that we are getting fast results. But as this is happening, I did a trick over here. I told the tool that I want to create an application that is like Splitwise. Now, Splitwise is quite commonly known as famous. So it will create something that actually does what Splitwise does. What I have seen the challenge lies in is that if you're doing something very new, something like which doesn't exist or is not been in the industry for a long time, then AI doesn't work well with it, right? So it doesn't work with the latest and the greatest of the API versions, latest and the greatest of ideas, latest and the greatest of I don't know, UI things. Things have to be there, and AI should have learned those things a couple of months back, typically for it to work. Um, so that's an issue, but against which, while we are doing this, we are getting instant gratification. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you like UI that hopefully, let's see how it goes. But hopefully, I'm going to show you UI that would take us days to develop something like that single-handedly. Um, but as that will happen, and as I will open the code, the feeling will be very familiar. Every developer has gone through this feeling, and that feeling is seeing someone else's code. Have you actually felt that? Lots and lots of good quality or bad quality, but when you see someone else's code, you literally it's like your own baby versus someone else's baby, right? So you'll be seeing someone else's code. You will not uh, you're not gonna like it, right? And that's a problem. And that also in a way tells me that maybe in future writing new code will be very easy, but fixing old code will become extremely expensive and hard because you'll always be seeing someone. Even if you are a developer and looking at your own code, which is generated via AI, you'll feel like it is someone else's code. And it makes me think that maybe maintaining, reviewing code will become much more expensive. And when I say expensive, not necessarily in terms of uh, how much money you spend, but expensive in terms of how much time it takes you, how much willingness do you need, right? Um, so that's that. And because the amount of code that it is going to write, the code that I maybe it's going to write a few features that I don't even need, and maybe it's going to use the UI that I'm not, maybe I may not need. It's going to do so much there out there that it will be hard to maintain this code. Uh, and we may think why this may be happening, right? This may be this is or why is it hard to maintain this code, or why we don't like this code. And I think this is because we barely see what is happening, right? It's writing code, it'll keep doing what it needs to do, uh, but we'll not be able to see what's going on behind the scene. So let's have a look at it. And I was actually hoping that by now at least it would be done running the code, but it is not. Right? But fortunately, this is not the first time I'm running this, so I can open an old code base. Maybe after we wait for 1 or 2 more minutes. If there are any questions, I can take them at this point. Yes, Ankit.
We have a question from Manish regarding how is this different than using, let's say, Cursor AI or Copilot?
Sure. So Cursor and Copilot, I think I'm here giving it way more uh, control. It's automatically running all the commands. I can even say run something, download something. I can even give it URLs, and we'll go read the URL in documentation and bring it over here. I feel that it has bigger context in terms of which directories and what it can read. You can tell it to think hard, so it will actually create a strategy of doing something as well. Uh, Copilot also, I think it's limited in terms of what you could do. Here, you're just telling you're giving it a bigger context. But more than anything else, for me, I started using it because just using cursor was a little bit of a barrier to entry for me. I have never used cursor. I have never. So what I thought was, hey, I don't want to use cursor. So I think there may be technical differences, but mainly for me, it was also preference of what I want to use. And I actually want to show you, right? Well, lucky for me that this is already done. So now I can go and I didn't remember which directory it was in. I'm going to go into this directory and open idea. Right. So now what I'm doing is I'm using one of the most powerful AI tool alongside my ID. Right. So here is my ID. I'm on the left side. Now you'll be seeing me writing prompts. On the right side, there'll be code. And we are talking about this just a few minutes back, right? That everything looks like someone else's code. Everything looks like what I don't know what is going on. Let's have a look at all the work that it did, right? And this is 33rd minute into the talk, and we joined good 10 minutes early, right? So this is maybe in 15 minutes, it has created all this code. I'm also going to quickly set up the configuration over here, and so that I can keep running it from the right side. Let's go ahead and see what happens. Oops. Well, so this is what I think is called vibe coding, which is you take things and then you start running them, and as errors come in, you put in the error and you hit enter, and now it will try to figure out where the issue is and it will try to fix it. Um, so let's see how much time it takes. By that time, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we do have. I think one question from Himesh was, does Anthropic run model locally or is processing happening on cloud? I think Abhishek answered it. It's happening on the cloud.
It's the processing is happening on cloud. Its processing is happening on cloud. Let me also move on to the next thing. What we are trying to do now, what we will do is, as I said, we were not able to see what was going on, right? And how things were changing. So we don't want to just do think prompt, think prompt. We maybe want to do think prompt, observe what is going on, then run, and then think again, right? So we want to do sort of also want to keep doing this loop as we go. So where is our code? Now, again, we still don't know what's going on as this code is being written. Let's quickly have a look at what our version control is saying. And our Git repository is not created. There's no local history. So I think that's the first thing that we need to fix. So as this goes on, let's also, while we did this, so I think we just made this a little bit more human by doing this. I'm going to show you as this prompt runs that how we did that. Um, But the idea is this is still think, prompt, observe, run. When we did original development, which was think, develop, that was legacy way of working, and we actually made it better over time, right? We didn't just did think, develop. We introduced practices, we introduced different ways of working. So it actually, if you were crafting your code, it actually looked like this, that you think something, then you'd write a failing test case if you're doing TDD. Then you'd write enough code to pass the test, then you'd refactor, and then you'd think. This is how your code cycle would actually work, right? And we would actually bring discipline into the kind of work that we do. And still, again, I'm trying to figure out if we can do a quick demo and then we can quickly try the new thing. So what would be an equivalent, right? So what would be an equivalent of doing the same thing on the AI side? And that would look something like this, which is think, prompt, observe, verify. Can you run your test cases if you were doing this? Then again run, and then think, right? So the cycle changes. Now what we want to do is, now I'm just going to have to wait until this really ends so we can actually see how something like this we can do using Claude code. And let's until then I can ask a quick question. How many of you already know what is TCR, test, commit, and revert? Like 7, 8, 10 people. Okay, good. Well, test, commit, and revert is sort of way of working where you would write a test case. If it passes, you will commit it. And if the test case doesn't pass and you're doing it in a given window of time, so every 2 minutes, let's say you're giving yourself a deadline to write a test case and make it pass and commit it. If you cannot write a test case and if your system doesn't come in passing state, then the code that you had already written will be reverted. So it sort of forces you to work in extremely small iterations, and it forces you to keep committing your code as your test cases pass. So what we are going to do is now we're going to try telling Claude, can you do that or not? And now let's see if, now let's really hope, first of all, that Claude gets there, it's done writing its code, and we can move on. Until then, do we have any other questions?
Yep, we have. One question from Gaurav is, does it take Figma design to develop application like other AI tools? Can it build iOS/Android development?
Yes, so I did do iOS development with this. I did work with iOS code, and it did create a project, but unfortunately, and this is a good example actually, that you still need the knowledge. So people are, I mean, internet and Twitter and everything is right now filled with these stories of vibe coding that, hey, over the weekend I was working on something and created an app and running it and deploying it. I was trying a simple iOS code. It started Xcode and I tried running it and it didn't work. And I really didn't know what to do next. And I really had to just abandon the project. So I think the knowledge of running and doing things and debugging is still needed. I don't think so. You never knew how to do iOS coding, and one Saturday morning you'd wake up and start writing that code. At least I couldn't do it. Some people may be able to do it. Any other questions? But yes,
Yeah,
I think the short answer is yes, it supports multiple programming languages, and yes, we can write code for those things as well.
I think one question from Gaurav was, can it take Figma design?
Yes, that's also an excellent question. I tried doing so. I started using Claude. I mean Claude Code before MCP came. We are going to talk about MCP, but or so before MCP had come. So what I used to do is I would actually put the design in the directory. So I would take a screenshot and put the designs in the directory, and I would tell it that, hey, can you use these designs to create the app? And it would do a fairly good job. Any other questions?
Yeah. One, I think, philosophical question is, when we write code on our own, it will create a knowledge graph and it will be easier and faster later to build upon the software. But with AI, it's easy at first, but we won't have the knowledge. So in long
Harder
run,
later.
does
That's actually so true. I think I'm going to use it for one of my LinkedIn posts, maybe if you're okay. Do I have your permission to use this? That development is easier first in this and harder later, much harder later, right? Yeah, that's true. I would say that's true. Um, while we do this, let's quickly see if I have a similar project that I have already created or not, and maybe I'll run it and we can start using that project. Okay, so maybe this is how we want to observe things. Let me go ahead, and what I'm going to do is we started creating a new project. It's taking a lot of time for to save ourselves. Let's wait for maybe 10 more seconds. It's doing something. If it doesn't, then we will shift to this different project that I have created previously. We'll start Claude over here. We have the Git history over here. Now, typically, so what we said was that, hey, we want to do think, prompt, observe, verify, and run. The reason I said, have you used PCR or not is, luckily, and this is another thing, that knowledge now suddenly becomes extremely valuable, right? If you know of something, you can tell Claude to do it, or you can tell AI to do it. So you have to have that amount of knowledge so that you can instruct someone to work in a certain way. Now, what you can actually do is that you can work in this uh, application in a way where you can actually tell Claude to create a ongoing guideline. So when you're writing code, what to do, what to use, and you can do it by writing a command called init. As you do init, it will create a file called Claude MD. And when you create it, just like how we as human beings, when you are writing code, you are following all the different guidelines that you have learned over time. You can tell that, hey, you also follow these guidelines, be it TDD or be it init, sorry, be it TCR. So it will do that. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and tell it, can you create claude.md file that, or actually, you know what, how about we do it in two steps? First, let's see what it does if I just init manually. And now it's going to go ahead and create a file that think of it as an instruction that it is creating for itself. After that, we are going to go ahead and create instructions based on our sort of feedback. So we're going to tell it follow TCR, follow TDD, follow clean coding. What else? Maybe solid principles or something, or keep function small or something we'll say. And let's see how it works. Yes, so it does take history into context. It does run all, I mean, it will go and first try to understand the project and understanding of that project and some of the things that it's going to put in Claude MD as well, so that when next time when you start it, it can load that understanding. And actually, that is why I'm generating it as well. It seems everything takes too much time for a good presentation when you're working with Claude. So let it get generated, and I'll quickly walk all of you through it. Uh, it does when you're doing each session. So this is called a session, and each session that you're doing, it will also keep the context of the session and all the queries that you're writing on top. As a matter of fact, every once in a while, it will tell you to compact the context. So you have to do like there's a command called /compact, and it kind of compacts and summarizes all the history. Now let's quickly go ahead and have a look at claude.md. So this is the file that actually talks about all the build command, all the code styling guidelines that Claude will now use when it starts. And you can pretty much tell Claude that can you run it in dev mode, and it will actually run this command internally so that the project starts running. Or here are the guidelines. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell it first. Let's see if it's actually working or not. So all the test cases are passing, which is good. Let's say the front end is working or not. I think it started the back end. So this is one of the app and UI that it had created on single prompt, and it's right there. It has some functionality. I can go and see things. Here it is. There is add expense button. I can add expenses. I can log out if I want. There's balances, members. But if you look at it, this time it created it for a cell phone. I don't know why it created when I was working. One of the reasons maybe I abandoned this project was it created it in a viewport which is only well suited for mobile phones. So that's what it is. And what I'm going to do now is give it one more try just to get to, or maybe no, we'll keep going on. So now we have this and we have this, and I'm going to say good work on adding the code styles. Can you add about using TCR, which is test and commit, or revert along with TDD? We want to make sure that code has tests, or we want to make sure that tests are generated before production code. Now, as I do this, it's going to now update the claude.md to do kind of add a new way of working, and hopefully we'll see somewhere how it updates it. But as we do it, I think this was just one example. So I have tried doing the same exercise multiple times, and I've tried doing this over and over again, same apps. Now, what happens is that while you're doing it, it's creating apps this easily. So you want to be able to delete your code, and you want to say, let me go ahead and delete everything and just regenerate everything again, right? And as you do that, what ends up happening is you kind of realize that every time it has different results. So one time I created it, the same app, same prompt created an app like this. I didn't even know what it meant, right? Or Office Launch, yeah, I mean, I know what it meant. Then I did it again, and it totally different UI, totally different schemes, very different apps. So it's the same prompt or similar prompt creating different, and this is the one that we just saw, right? Which is, I don't know why it decided that it has to be as a uh, just suited for cell phones. So as I was creating it over and over again, I kind of realized that this is really uh, just not ready for production. Nobody wants an app that is just, using no human being's judgment. It is using AI's own judgment. It is deciding on its own what color scheme will it be, what uh, layout will it have, what screens will it use, and whatnot. So I kind of realize that, oh, you know what? Maybe what I need to do is I have to spend more time in defining the product. When I was writing the prompt, when is there a different way of saying what I want? So when I was creating the front end, I had to figure out how the back end should also look like. Uh, so started spending time defining the product, but it really didn't go the way I would have wanted. Every time it would still create kind of variations if I deleted code and regenerated it. Um, I kind of realized that it's just not the definition that matters. My definition has to have a standard format. And what kind of standard formats are these? They're very simple standard formats that you can think of. And Gaurav, thanks a lot for asking this question earlier. Figma has almost become a standard when we talk about UI design, right? So Figma is a standard format. Uh, what else? If you're talking about API design, which is backend design, then Swagger has become almost a standard for backend API documentation. So I didn't only have to think about it, I had to write it in a very standard format as well. So I had to keep writing it in a different way, or I had to use Figma designs. So I then realized that, okay, what I really have to do is, what I really want to do is, I want to give it some standardized way of working. And for that, I had to do this. So now let's try doing this. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do it in this app or not, but for the purpose of demonstration, when you're doing it, you can try it, which is you can take, if you have a Figma design, you can take a Figma design, you can take this and say copy the URL, which is copy link to selection right here. This gives you a link to this specific page. And that brings the question, I think, Biswajit, you did talk about MCPs, so we can now talk about MCPs. Give me 1 second. And let's also have a look at it. What we talked about TCR earlier, now I'm assuming that TCR related things have already come in over here, or maybe I just executed it in a wrong project. So it'll come here, but I see it's already there. Let me. Maybe not. Anyways, so what I started doing was I started taking these links and then I started adding it in the prompt. So I would say, here is a Figma image. Can you create a screen that looks exactly like this? And of course, it wouldn't originally know what it had to do. But there is something called MCP. And I think it's called Model Context Protocol. That's for it to access other resources which are outside of the LLM, right? So it can now go ahead and talk to different models. For which what I did was I have Claude desktop installed on my machine where I configured all these MCPs. And for that, I had to set up MCP for Figma as well. Now, Figma MCP, you'll have to, this in itself is a tutorial. So you'll have to find where the URL is, you'll have to put that NPX tool, and then you'll have to add it in your configuration file in Claude Desktop. For me, it worked. I added it in Claude Desktop and it got imported over here. And as it was imported, I was able to actually run a prompt that looked like this. This link is of Figma design. Can you create an exact screen like this to support chat? And it would actually go, we already have configured MCP servers. I have already configured servers. It will go and get it. Now, I don't know what it just printed. I'll show you the MCP servers that it is running, but it was able to go and connect with this design. And then it was able to fetch that data, fetch these designs, and we'll see how it actually creates this full UI. Right? And now while that is happening, we're gonna see the results of the previous command that we saw. I hope it has changed it now. Yes, right here. So it has talked about development workflow. It says do TDD, do TCR, run test, if pass commit, if fail, revert to last commit, red, green, refactor, and test coverage. So it added now every single time when Claude will run, it would actually try to run in this sort of context. And because of that, what happens is now that, remember we added observe over here, at least you'll be able to observe what's changing. It's continuously committing things as it works. So I can go and also keep looking at the logs, and you'll see that this log keeps committing. So as we said earlier, it is, when you think about AI, you are actually thinking about just code generation, but it can actually do things. It can run commands to a degree that if I say TCR and it needs to generate a script to run TCR, it will generate a script first, .sh file, and then it will kind of work on that. But not only that, as it does development, it will run tests, develop, run test, develop. So it's going to do all of those things, including automated commits as things go on. And we should be able to see history over here. And then, of course, we personally also want to, click on the play button, run and see things, whether they are running or not. And then, of course, long debugging sessions. Right? So I think some recommendations, it's still running. One of the things that I kind of found myself was too much code. I didn't realize what's happening where. So I was actually writing good prompts, not good prompts, but I was writing prompts that actually told or asked Claude, can you walk me through file by file or workflow by workflow? And can you tell me where is the code and what it is doing? So it will then tell me one by one what's happening in the entire project. Second was using MCP. So I was able to use MCP, and I didn't show you. The other thing that you could do is every Swagger document also has a JSON endpoint. So I was able to kind of put JSON endpoint over here and say, fetch, can you fetch this JSON endpoint? Oops, this is wrong. Too many windows. Every Swagger document has JSON endpoint. So when I was designing backend, I would do the document, in this case, I didn't, but I would do the documentation first now. I would actually take time in defining how the API should look, how a standard. So standardization actually matters a lot now because AI will easily understand it, right? So when I'm writing an API, how I design them is also important now that RESTful APIs have a specific standardized way, what get does, what post does, how you want to use plural versus singular names, You use all of that, put it in your API documentation, and then say fetch this API doc and create a backend in the backend folder. So, and that would start creating the backend also, right? So either use MCP to connect with standard ways of distributing knowledge, which is either Figma or your JSON, uh, or use fetch. So give URLs, connect it with a document story. You can do BDD and maybe also give BDD data to it. Focus on design, which is AI can help generate code. So idea is that AI is generating code and it's going to create lots and lots of assumptions. It's going to it's going to assume a lot of things. So how do we actually reduce those assumptions? So those are the things that you'll have to take care of. Maybe you do architecture diagram, maybe you do Swagger documentation, maybe you do Figma designs, do all of these different design activities, put it in there, either put it in the code base itself or put it as a MCP. What if it supports MCP, then put it in one of those services and give it to AI so that it actually follows your instructions and understand those context points. Also, document as you go. So as you're going on, so typically we would do, hey, let's design for the next sprint, right? But or let's plan for the next sprint. But now as you go there, you may need to actually document those things in a way so that AI can start understanding those things, right? So it's true BDD or true sort of shifting things to the left. Do documentation first and give it to your AI so that it can do this. Handling new tech with care. Now, this is something that happened to me. I wanted to use, and still haven't been able to do it. OpenAI has real-time APIs to do voice in, voice out models. So you can take voice in, run your sort of LLM on it, and then it will output directly as voice. So you don't have to do voice to text, text to voice, and then work with it. But I at least was able to give all the data. I actually used Firecrawl to create markdown files from OpenAI document and then give all the documentation to it. And it tried coding as well, but that code never worked. Um, so in the end, AI building AI app is hard. So if you tell Claude to create an app that uses AI effectively, it's not really happening because those APIs are so new, those technologies are so new that Claude and ChatGPT and all these different things have not actually internalized it or sort of learned it well, right? Because these models were created a couple of months back, and couple of months is actually a lot in today's day and time. Um, let's move on. Conclusion. So I think we are, wow, almost on time. What did we learn or what did I learn as I was going with it? So first, as a software craftsperson, I've always thought that we are going too fast when we write code, right? We forget to write test cases. We don't care about quality. Sometimes CI/CD is broken or it's taking too much time. But the constant need of going fast actually makes us slow, right? And that constant need of going fast doesn't let us do better work later. So any project that lives more than 6 months, if you didn't do a good job, 6 months later, you start seeing the pain of technical debt. Um, so I don't know whether do we want to go this fast or not? Do we want this much code generated in 1 hour? Even the code that we may have, if we were to do some sort of code quality or code, I mean, run a tool like Lock, I think we may have written thousands of lines of code just in this 1 hour of session while I was talking. Um, and who will fix? And twice today we created code that didn't work. So who will fix all this code, right? So so that was one of the thought that I had. But I did feel that it was a great way to get started. If you wanted to create an app or if you wanted to create a UI for the voice in, voice out model, my UI and React plus Next JS application and WebRTC and getting the audio stream in the backend, all of it was done flawlessly. And under half an hour, right? So I had a UI ready. It was already asking for audio permission. Audio was going in the back end. It was being stored as a file. A lot of it just automatically did. So it's a great way for us to get started. At least it can reduce the start time. I think it's also good to create CRUD application. So at least the splitwise application that I tried creating once or twice, I was actually able to create in around 2 hours time, working front end and working back end. It's also great for converting screenshots to front-end design. So if you had simple screenshots from somewhere, I was able to give it in the project. So in the project, I would store these JPEG files and I'll say, here is a JPEG file. Can you create an exact same front end? And it would create it. It only failed in these places where they had very specific circular button with down arrows and all. Those were the things I think we'll have to kind of provide from outside. Um, but at the end, I feel that there's still a lot to be discovered. We still have to try it. We still have to use it to know how well can it actually help us. But definitely when I was there, I did find traces of artificial intelligence in it because it was able to center divs very well, horizontally and vertically. So uh, if I were doing it, I think I would be saving days and days worth of time that I just lose in centering divs. Um, so I think if there was one thought that I want all of you at least to leave with, that thought is this final thought that we need to move beyond the whole pilot and co-pilot analogy, right? I think uh, ChatGPT or our GitHub Copilot may not be the pilot anymore. I think soon we won't be writing codes or at least typing each character of the code ourselves. And we'll be more like air traffic controllers. So we may have to move analogy from uh, pilot and copilot to air traffic controllers, where we'll be coordinating many, many agents. If you actually look at it, and this was even not even planned, right? Hey, something is not working. Let me start one agent on this tab, other agent on this tab. I'll kind of run two agents and see which application works, right? And so I think we'll be working with multiple agents, and our job is going to be coordinating between these agents and making sure that they do good quality work. And just like the planes land at the end of the day, we kind of land these things safely in our users' uh, hands. Uh, so in short, I think our challenge is not going to be flying the planes, but it will be directing the skies. That being said, I hope you learned something and hope I was able to create at least enough curiosity for you to try Claude Code at home, even if it meant spending $5 or $10 out of your own pocket. Please, I think you should do it. I've always been a big advocate of uh, kind of using the best tools that money can buy or that you can afford. Because I do see that we use things like phones or TVs for just a couple of hours or half an hour a day, and we spend a lot of money on it. But something that as developers we use 8 hours a day, we actually think sometime that do we want to spend that $10 or not? But I think it's totally worth it. Please, if you get a chance, uh, do install it, do kind of charge it with credits and use it. That being said, let me quickly check if we have any questions. And I think we have time for questions, so more than happy to take them.
Yeah. So one question, like I think repeated twice. What is the cost of development with these type of tools? So maybe you can take an example, like what you did just now. How much did it cost?
Let me quickly check. I think I may have it. Just give me 1 second. I'm opening my console and going through the billing information. I think this costed me around $5. Both the two different windows may have costed me around $5. But again, it's a little there's a curve to it. When you start the project, it does a lot more and it creates a lots and lots of files. But as you start, I have seen that it's first $5 are the fastest spent, and then it spends a little lesser because it is not working with all the files. And now earlier Claude code did not understand paths, and it did not understand. I mean, it will try to find it, but now you can actually write file path. There will be autocomplete in it, and you can tell it to change this file. Or I would actually suggest going first, navigating to those directories, and then starting Claude, and maybe try asking those questions so it's working with smaller contexts, and it can help you save money.
One question we got is, does Claude actually doing TDD, or is it just a facade? Like, can we verify, is it actually doing it?
Yeah. It does. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show you the observation part. It really has to sort of 1 hour is a little less for it to run and for me to present and also open the slides and doing all of those things. But you can try it, and that's why I didn't do TDD and I said TCR, which is you'll see the commits. So if you try Claude, you say TCR and you do it, you'll actually see the commits kind of being created. Also, running those commits or committing your code is important aspect of coding with AI, because it's really hard to revert your change. So the first time when I did it, it generated so much code. I did a lot of it and something went wrong. And it wasn't easy for me to revert to like 2 prompts back or 1 prompt back. So if you do commits, at least it'll be easier for you to kind of keep reverting when you need to.
Um, yeah, I think how can we leverage AI to optimize the existing code base?
So recently, Claude actually also has come up with in Claude code, you can actually think hard, and it would actually look at the file and start creating strategies, and it'll think about things. I haven't tried it on old code, but what I would do is I would actually go in old code. I would say this code, these folders or invoicing module is in this folder. I see there may be a problem with it. I want to find either security related or this. Can you think hard? How can I take what strategy can I take to fix security issues or make it more modular, or how would I create modules? And most probably it'll be able to do different things, give you strategy, and you can run it. Uh, but that's still an experiment that you'd have to try doing it yourself. I haven't tried it myself.
One comment from Sahil is, what I feel is just that humans need well-defined requirement. AI needs to, just like we do in Figma. We should approach AI in the same way, because after all, it's artificial. In fact, it needs even more precise and well-defined instruction to function. And due to the hype around AI, we might often overlook this aspect and expect it to work seamlessly in any context.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're right. I think what has happened is now thinking has become way more important. And other thing that I usually refer to is someone had said that writing is doing of thinking. So just thinking is not thinking. Right? The doing part of thinking comes in writing. So writing and thinking is going to become so much more important, and being able to because if you write very long prompt, it still gets confused, right? So figuring out how to articulate ideas, how to succinctly put them forward, all these skills are going to become extremely important, at least in near future.
Cool. I think we have covered all questions. Any question which I have not covered?
I think, and then just one last thing, I didn't realize my command line prompt as I exit out of it, it does print the cost. It is $3.16 for the first app that I started working with. And the second prompt, unfortunately, I cleared it, so I don't have the cost for it.
I think
Second session. Yeah.
One more philosophical question from Nitin is, like, with thoughts becoming actions so quickly, I tend to grow impatient in the pursuit of getting more thoughts acted on. But if something fails or something is not in line with the expectation, my patience walks down. And there been multiple times I definitely want to embrace AI, but would like to know some psychological aspects one has to train themselves while following this.
I think, all this while when our parents used to tell us that patience is the virtue or go slow to go fast, all those things are going to become more and more important. As we go, I think we have already discovered that human attention span has decreased. Uh, it's become lesser than a goldfish. So we can't even see something for 8 seconds. And all the Netflix movies and Netflix shows that I have abandoned, not watched, is quite a proof of that our attention span is not even now, watching a full movie. We'd rather watch a reel, right? So uh, I have no answer to it, but I can agree with you. This may happen that we'll run impatient. There'll be many abandoned projects, but the I think recipe of success is hidden in these things as well, right? As you know, and now what we are in a way, what we are saying is developer who can think well and also has patience and also has skills will become very successful and can multitask actually. Awesome. Thanks a lot, folks. It was a wonderful call. I hope you'd all use Cloud Code when you get a chance, maybe over the weekend. And yeah, if you have questions, keep sending them my way. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Sapan. Thank you everyone for
Bye.
attending.